Welcome to Study Like a Scientist HSC questions. So remember that when you are faced with an HSC question, you must read the question, then plan your response, and then check your response. So when you read it, highlight the verbs, understand scientific words and the purpose of the question, notice any plurals and the number of marks. And then when you're planning your response, make sure you use some scientific vocabulary. Plan how you're going to answer it as a table or a list or a method, and then actually engage with the stimulus and be logical in the way you respond. This is a stimulus question that we're going to go through, so there'll be lots of stimulus to engage with, and then when you finish, check that you answered what you intended to answer. So let's have a look at the 2023 paper for question 25, and this is a long question with multiple parts, so we'll go through each part step by step. And you can see that it's a stimulus question. So let's engage with the stimulus. It's Huntington's disease. Now, you may have met this disease when you've been studying, or you may not. So it doesn't actually matter. There should be enough information in the stimulus to help you. And what it does do is it tells you it's autosomal. That means it's not sex-linked. It's dominant, and that means it only needs one allele to be present for the disease to show. And it's genetic. So we're already in the world of modules 5 and 6. Genetic diseases, we're going to come into some module 6 stuff in a minute, and also a bit of module 8 because it's a genetic disease. So we've got a family pedigree here, and you've got, these are grandparents here, these are parents, and these are children, and we've got a key telling you whether they've got the disease or not, and whether they're male or female. So these shapes should be familiar to you, but have a look carefully. And then we're going to have a look, and it says using the pedigree. So we must refer to the pedigree. That's what using means. You've got to refer to the pedigree in your answer. Justify the genotype of individual H. So that genotype means the letters present in the genome, so big letter, little letter, or big letter, of individual H. So here, we want to talk about this person here, and refer to the letters on the pedigree to identify individuals. Now, this person has parents, and they have children, so they are going to be how we justify, in other words, give data using our pedigree, so using the pedigree to give evidence for why we have come up with our decision. Now, let's have a look at the marking criteria, and we'll see what I mean about giving evidence. You can suggest an answer without using the pedigree. So you could identify, you could say, I know what autosomal dominant means, so I can suggest an answer, but to get full marks, you have to use evidence from the pedigree. Okay, so let's have a look at what a student has written, and let's see how many marks they would get. So read this answer, pause, look back at the marking criteria, and look at the stimulus, and see if this person gets full marks or partial marks or no marks. And then we'll have a talk about it. So pause and have a look at that. So what this person has done is they've told us a definition of the word genotype, but they haven't gone on to say what that genotype is. They haven't said big letter, or big letter, little letter, or little letter, little letter. They've said nothing. So they probably just get a mark for a relevant comment, but they may not even get that. It might depend on whether they wrote anything on the diagram on the stimulus. So when you try this question for yourself, I'm sure you can improve on this response. So let's have a look at the next part of the question. So we're moving into more module 5 territory here, and you'll probably recognize the codon chart. So don't just jump straight into the codon chart, read the question. So Huntington's disease is caused by a misfolded protein called huntingtin. It is caused by excessive repeats of the DNA sequence CAG in the coding strand. And then this is important, this last bit, the mRNA that is produced has the same sequence as the DNA. And that's important because you're going to be asked to identify the amino acid that is repeated. So you're going to use this chart to do that. So let's have a look at what this student has done. So So they hopefully are going to correctly identify the amino acid, and they have written this. So pause the video and work out if they're correct, and if they're not correct, correct them. So what did you decide? Are they right? They are right. They say glutamine, and that is CAG there on the chart. One thing I would say is they have written a lot. For an identify question, they only needed to say the word glutamine. So save themselves some time if they wanted to. Now, let's have a look at the next part of the question. So this question goes on. We have more stimulus to engage with. So let's make sure we read. It says normal Huntington protein has 10 to 26 repeats. Disease has 37 to 80 repeats. And this leads to an alteration in the structure of the protein. And this graph shows the relationship between the age of onset of the disease and the number of repeats. So remember to read everything in front of you. We've got the age of onset here. We have the number of repeats here. It only starts at 37 because we saw that 37 was the beginning of the diseased number of repeats. And it asks you to explain the relationship. Explain. Not just state, explain. So I don't want a description of the graph, I want an explain. So let's have a look at marking criteria. So pause, have a read, and then let's see how this person has done with this question. So pause this, have a read of their response, and give them a mark. Okay, so what did you think? Did this person explain or just state? So I think that they have described the shape of the graph, but they have not really explained why. So they're lacking a reference to the change in the shape of the Huntington protein in here. So I think it can be improved. So when you try for yourself, I'd like to see that improvement. Now the last bit of this question takes us into module 6. We've got a gel here. There's more stimulus to read. Don't get tired. Let's read it. So diagram 1 shows a pedigree of a family. So here's diagram 1, the pedigree of a family. And diagram 2 shows the results of gel electrophoresis on fragments of DNA from chromosome 4, which is known to be altered in Huntington's disease. So let's have a look. We've got the direction of DNA movement. So this is kind of weird. We've got the wells at the bottom here, and we've got things moving through the gel towards the top, so don't be confused about that. We have the number of individuals and the age of onset. So NA means not affected. We've got a key down here, and we've got a key with a little star there saying currently unaffected. So these two individuals. And then we have the number of repeats from very high to very low number of repeats. And we know that from the previous question that 37 is our kind of magic number for getting disease. So we're being asked in the question to predict whether individuals S and U will be affected by the disease, and if so, at what age? Okay, and you have to justify, in other words, give evidence to back up your answer. So bear in mind that this has an and, so you're going to need to talk about both of these individuals when you justify your answer. So let's have a look at the marking criteria. So pause it, have a read, and then let's have a look at this person's answer. So pause and read this person's answer, looking at the marking criteria, and see if they are right or wrong or only partially correct. Now, this person has not really engaged with the stimulus, or at least not both parts. They've only really engaged with the pedigree chart part. So that's the top part, diagram number 1 from this question. And they haven't talked at all about the gel electrophoresis bit. So they haven't matched up whether their gel electrophoresis line, how many repeats that means they've got, and whether the disease will happen early or late. So I think there's lots of improvements that this person could make. So when you are trying it for yourself, have a look at all parts of this question and give it a go for yourself. See if you can improve on this person's response.